The Vorth Dominion had conquered 17 star systems, enslaved 4 sentient species, and never lost a single major battle. Their warriors stood 7 feet tall, covered in interlocking scales that could deflect small-caliber rounds. Their warships bristled with plasma cannons that turned asteroid fields into molten slag. And their war master, Vorth of the Third Brood, had never tasted defeat. Today, he would add an 18th system. The target was a small, unremarkable cluster of worlds on the galactic rim, inhabited by a species that called themselves humans. Their technology was laughable. Their ships used chemical propulsion. Their weapons still fired solid projectiles. Their bodies were soft, pink, and easily torn. In the Vorth archives, humans were listed as low-threat, pre-space flight capable, a mistake they had corrected only 50 years ago when humans first stumbled into FTL travel. But Vorth did not care about corrections. He cared about expansion. War Master hissed his censor officer, a skinny Vorth named Vex. The human colony of New Hope is now within weapons range. No defensive fleet detected. No orbital platforms. They are defenseless. Vorth bared his teeth, a display of pleasure among his kind. Send the standard ultimatum. Give them 1 hour to surrender. Then burn the surface. The message was sent in every language the Vorth had recorded for humanity. Simple words. Clear meaning. You are now subjects of the Vorth Dominion. Surrender your world, your resources, and your population to our glorious empire. Resistance will be met with total annihilation. You have 1 standard hour. The humans replied in 17 seconds. 1 word. No, Vorth laughed. It was a deep, grinding sound, like rocks tumbling down a cliff. They have courage. I admire courage. It makes the screaming so much sweeter. He turned to his weapons officer. Fire a warning shot. Destroy their main spaceport. Then demand surrender again. A single plasma bolt lanced from the lead Vorth dreadnought. It crossed 200,000 miles of vacuum and struck the colony's primary spaceport. The port was a modest structure, 5 landing pads, a control tower, a fuel depot. The plasma bolt turned everything within half a mile into a crater of molten glass. The shockwave flattened buildings. The firestorm cooked the air. Vorth waited for the second surrender message. Instead, he received a transmission from the planet's surface. A human face appeared on his view screen. A female with dark skin, short curly hair, and eyes that held no fear. She wore a simple blue uniform with no insignia. Behind her, smoke rose from distant fires. War Master Vorth, she said calmly. My name is Captain Sanyo Okonkwo. I'm the Human Defense Coordinator for this sector. I've been authorized to speak for humanity. Vorth leaned forward. Then speak quickly, little primate. You have 23 minutes left before I turn your world to ash. Captain Okonkwo did not blink. I'm not calling to surrender. I'm calling to give you a final warning. Turn your fleet around. Go back to your space. Never come near human territory again. Do this, and we will pretend this incident never happened. The Vorth bridge fell silent. Then Vorth roared with laughter, and his crew joined him. The sound echoed off the metal walls like thunder in a cave. You threaten us? Vorth said when he could speak. You, with your Stone Age weapons and your fragile bodies? We have 100 dreadnoughts. You have 0. We have 1,000,000 warriors. You have a few thousand frightened colonists. By the time the next sun rises, your species will be a footnote in our archives. Captain Okonkwo nodded slowly. That's what the last empire said. Vorth stopped laughing. What last empire? But the transmission ended. The screen went black. For a long moment, no one on the Vorth bridge spoke. Then Vorth's tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Grull, spoke up. War Master, I have reviewed the human military files we intercepted. There is an anomaly. Explain. The humans have no standing fleet to speak of. No planetary defenses. No battle stations. According to all known metrics, they should have been conquered 100 times over by their neighbors. Grull's voice dropped. But they haven't been conquered. And we can't find records of any neighbor that tried. Vorth frowned. What do you mean, you can't find records? I mean the data is missing. Erased. Scrubbed from every trade network and spy satellite we have access to. It's as if anyone who ever attacked humanity simply vanished from history. The War Master felt a cold sensation trickle down his spine. He ignored it. He was Vorth of the Third Brood. He did not feel cold. Send a reconnaissance drone to the surface, he ordered. Full spectrum scan. Find their defensive positions. And locate that human captain. I want her brought to my ship alive. The drone launched from the dreadnought's belly. It was a small, stealthy craft, barely larger than a human child, designed to slip through enemy sensors and return with pictures. It descended through the smoke-filled atmosphere of New Hope, weaving between columns of ash and flame. What it found made no sense. The colony was empty. Every building, every street, every bunker, all abandoned. There were no soldiers, no civilians, no vehicles, no weapons. The only signs of life were a few stray dogs and the occasional bird. The drone flew low over the spaceport crater, then over the residential district, then over the industrial zone. Nothing. KLA Vorn stared at the feed. They can't have evacuated. We would have seen the ships. Perhaps they were never there, offered Vex. Perhaps this was a decoy colony. A hologram. Holograms don't burn, Grull said quietly. We saw buildings collapse. We saw fire. The drone continued its search. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then, just as it was about to turn back, its sensors picked up something strange. A signal, not from the colony itself, but from deep underground. A low-frequency pulse, repeating every 3 seconds. The drone adjusted its course. It flew toward a small hill on the edge of the colony, where a single metal hatch lay half-hidden under dirt and grass. The hatch was sealed, but the signal was coming from beneath it. Vex tapped his console. War Master, I'm detecting a massive underground structure directly below this position. Thousands of life signs. And energy readings consistent with military-grade power reactors. KLA Vorn's eyes widened. They went underground. They were waiting for us to come down. Grull shook his head. That doesn't make sense. Why would they hide instead of fight? They have no weapons that can threaten our ships. As if in answer, the signal changed. The pulse became faster, more urgent. And then, a new voice filled the Vorth bridge, not Captain Okonkwo's, but a deeper, older voice. A human male with a calm, almost sleepy tone. War Master KLA Vorn. This is General Marcus Thorne, United Nations Space Command. You have made a serious error in judgment. KLA Vorn snarled. Show yourself, coward. Face me like a warrior. General Thorne chuckled. It was a soft, dry sound. Oh, I'm not hiding. I'm saving you. See, if I showed you what's coming, you'd run. And I want you to stay. I want you to understand exactly what you've done. The feed from the drone flickered. For a split second, the image showed the hatch opening. Then the drone's camera went black. Not static, just black, as if something had reached up and covered the lens. What happened? Demanded KLA Vorn. Vex's claws trembled over his console. The drone stopped transmitting, War Master. But before it died, I received one final data packet. A single audio file. Play it. The bridge speakers crackled. Then a human voice. Not Thorne's, not Okonkwo's, but something younger, perhaps a soldier, spoke 7 words. You fool. You just declared war on the galaxy's most lethal predator. The silence that followed lasted a full 10 seconds. Then KLA Vorn slammed his fist into his command chair. Launch all assault shuttles. Burn the entire continent if you have to. I want every human on that planet dead before midnight. None of his crew noticed the second signal, the one coming not from the planet, but from the edge of the system. It was faint, almost undetectable, and it was counting down. The first wave of Vorth assault shuttles descended on New Hope like a swarm of locusts. 300 craft, each carrying 20 armed warriors, screamed down through the smoke-choked sky. Their objective was simple: locate the underground bunker, breach it, and kill every human inside. The War Master had promised double rations and a month's leave to the first squad that brought him a human head. The shuttles landed in a loose perimeter around the hill. Vorth warriors poured out, their plasma rifles glowing orange in the dim light. They moved with practiced precision, covering angles, checking sight lines, communicating through encrypted neural links. These were not raw recruits. These were veterans of a dozen campaigns, killers who had snuffed out entire species without breaking a sweat. Grull led the assault. He was old by Vorth standards, nearly 60 cycles, but his claws were still sharp and his aim still true. He had fought the insectoid Xylans, the crystalline Vorn, even the dreaded psychic amps. Nothing had ever made him hesitate. Until today. Squad leaders, report. Grull hissed into his comm. Alpha Squad, in position at the hatch. No resistance. Beta Squad, covering the eastern ridge. All quiet. Gamma Squad, we found something. A tunnel entrance. About 200 meters north of the main hill. Grull felt a prickle of unease. 2 entrances? That meant the underground facility was larger than expected. Gamma, hold your position. Do not enter without orders. Alpha, breach the main hatch. Use thermal charges. Alpha Squad's designated breacher, a massive Vorth named Koth, planted a disc-shaped charge on the metal hatch. The charge detonated with a sharp crack, blowing the hatch inward. Black smoke poured out of the opening, followed by a wave of stale, recycled air. Hatch is open, Koth reported, sending in a scout drone. The tiny drone buzzed down into the darkness. Its feed showed a long, straight corridor lined with gray metal panels. No lights, no movement. The corridor ended in a heavy blast door, also sealed. That's strange, muttered Vex, who was monitoring from orbit. Why would they seal the inner door if they're expecting an attack? Grull didn't like mysteries. Mysteries got soldiers killed. Pull back, he ordered. We'll call an orbital bombardment. Level the hill. But before the order could be relayed, Gamma Squad screamed. Grull spun around. Gamma, report. Static. Then a single word, shouted in terror. It's in the walls. Then more static, then silence. All squads, converge on Gamma's position. Now, Grull broke into a run, his powerful legs eating up the distance. Behind him, 24 warriors followed, their plasma rifles raised. They found Gamma Squad's position, a dark tunnel entrance carved into the side of a rocky outcrop, but they did not find Gamma Squad. They found pieces, bodies torn apart, limbs separated from torsos, scales ripped off like cheap paint. The tunnel floor was slick with green Vorth blood. Grull stared at the carnage. He had seen death before. He had caused most of it. But this was different. This was not combat. This was butchery. War Master, he said quietly into his comm, we have casualties. Heavy casualties. I recommend immediate extraction. Kalevorn's voice was sharp. Extraction denied. You have your orders. Find the humans and kill them. War Master, with respect, I don't think this was humans. A sound came from the tunnel. A soft, scraping noise, like metal on stone. Then another. Then a dozen more. Grull raised his rifle and aimed into the darkness. His warriors did the same. The scraping stopped. And then the lights came on. Not Vorth lights, human lights. Floodlights mounted on the tunnel walls, blazing to life in sequence, illuminating everything in harsh white glare. Grull blinked, his nocturnal eyes struggling to adjust. When his vision cleared, he saw what had killed Gamma Squad. They were machines, but not like any machines Grull had ever seen. They were roughly human-shaped, bipedal, 2 arms, a head, but their bodies were covered in black, non-reflective metal. Their faces were smooth masks with a single red optical sensor where the mouth should be, and their hands ended in long, curved blades that dripped green. There were 20 of them. They stood in perfect silence, perfectly still, as if they had been waiting for the lights to come on. One of Grull's warriors panicked. He fired his plasma rifle on full auto, spraying the tunnel with superheated bolts. The shot struck the nearest machine square in the chest. The metal glowed orange for a moment, then cooled. The machine did not react. It simply stood there, absorbing the fire. Cease fire. Grull shouted. Cease fire, you idiot. The warrior stopped shooting. His rifle's power cell was empty. He looked at Grull with wide, terrified eyes. The machine took one step forward. Then another. Its red optical sensor scanned the remaining Vorth warriors, moving from face to face, as if counting them. Then it spoke. Its voice was flat, synthesized, but unmistakably human. Unauthorized biologicals detected. Designation, hostile. Threat level, negligible. Commencing elimination. The next 90 seconds were the worst of Grull's life. The machines moved with impossible speed, faster than any Vorth, faster than any living thing he had ever seen. Their blade hands carved through scale and bone like a knife through overripe fruit. Plasma bolts splashed harmlessly off their armor. Grenades were caught and thrown back before they could detonate. Grull did not fight. He ran. He ran faster than he had ever run in 60 cycles, dodging between rocks and shuttle wreckage, not looking back. Behind him, He heard the screams of his warriors, one by one, until there was only silence. He reached the main hill where Alpha Squad was still waiting by the open hatch. They saw his face and knew immediately what had happened. "Fall back to the shuttles," Grull gasped. "Now? We're leaving." They ran. They reached the shuttles. They lifted off. Only 12 Vorth survived out of 300. In orbit, KLA Vorn watched the feeds in stunned disbelief. His elite warriors slaughtered by machines. His assault failed before it truly began. He turned to Vex. "What were those things?" Vex's claws flew across his console. "I'm accessing human databases now, War Master. They're called Guardians, automated defense units. According to the files, every human colony has them. Then why didn't we know about them before?" Vex's face paled, as pale as a Vorth could get. "Because, War Master, humans don't list them in their military records. They list them in their mining records. These aren't weapons. They're repurposed industrial robots." KLA Vorn felt the cold sensation return, stronger this time. "Show me the rest of their database. Everything they have on warfare." Vex did. And for the first time in his life, KLA Vorn understood fear. The human database did not contain records of battles. It contained records of extinctions. Over 30 sentient species, wiped out by humanity over the course of their history. Not all at once, one by one, over thousands of years. Every species that had ever threatened humanity had been hunted down and erased so completely that even the Vorth, with their vast archive, had no memory of them. The most recent entry was from just 200 years ago, a species called the Youth. They had attacked a human frontier colony, killed 5,000 civilians. Humanity's response had been swift and total. Within 6 months, every Youth ship, every Youth world, every Youth individual was gone. The species was declared ecologically non-viable and removed from galactic records. The humans had a word for this process. They called it pest control. KLA Vorn looked at his fleet. 100 dreadnoughts, 30,000 warriors, and behind them, the entire might of the Vorth Dominion. He looked at the human database. One entry caught his eye. A quote from a human general, dated 3,000 years before their first space flight. "We do not fight wars. We end them. Permanently." The counting signal from the edge of the system reached 0. The human fleet appeared without warning. One moment, the space around New Hope was empty. The next, 120 ships blinked into existence, arranged in a perfect hunting formation around the Vorth dreadnoughts. They were not beautiful ships. They were not sleek or elegant. They were ugly, boxy, and scarred, the kind of ships that had seen combat and would see it again. And every single one of them was aiming its weapons directly at KLA Vorn's flagship. "War Master!" Vex shrieked. "We're surrounded. Where did they come from?" KLA Vorn's mind raced. Human FTL was supposed to be slow, their drives primitive. But these ships had arrived silently, instantly, without any of the energy signatures that preceded Vorth jumps. It was impossible, and yet it was happening. The human fleet's flagship, a massive, ugly vessel named the Last Word, opened a channel. General Marcus Thorne appeared on the screen again. This time, he was not in a bunker. He was on a bridge, surrounded by officers, all of them calm, all of them watching KLA Vorn with the same patient, predatory stillness. "War Master KLA Vorn," Thorne said. "I offered you a chance to leave. You didn't take it. Now we have a problem." KLA Vorn tried to summon his old arrogance. "You have 120 ships. I have 100. The difference is negligible. My warriors are bred for combat. Yours are farmers and miners. You cannot win." Thorne smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You're right. The difference is negligible. But you forgot one thing." "What?" "You're looking at our second fleet. The first fleet is currently en route to your homeworld. They should arrive in about 4 hours." The blood drained from KLA Vorn's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Thorne gestured to one of his officers. A star map appeared on the screen, showing the Vorth home system. A second map showed a human fleet, larger than the one here, at least 200 ships, already halfway across the void between the systems. Their trajectory was unmistakable. They were heading straight for Vorth Prime. "You declared war on us," Thorne continued. "You attacked our colony. You killed our people. Under human law, that gives us the right to respond with proportional force." "Proportional?" KLA Vorn spat. "You're threatening to destroy my homeworld." "No," Thorne said. "We're threatening to destroy your species." There's a difference. Proportional force means we match the damage you intended to cause. You intended to wipe out every human in this sector. So we intend to wipe out every Vorth in the galaxy. The Vorth bridge erupted into chaos. Officers shouted. Warriors reached for their weapons. Vorth raised a hand for silence, but even his command presence struggled to cut through the panic. You're insane, Vorth whispered. No species would risk total war over a single colony. You're wrong, Thorn said. Every species would risk it, but only humans would win. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to a near whisper. Let me tell you something about humans, War Master. We evolved on a death world, a planet where every other species was faster, stronger, deadlier than us. We couldn't outrun our prey. We couldn't outfight our predators. So we learned to do something else. What? We learned to be patient. We learned to track. We learned to hunt. We learned that you don't have to be the strongest. You just have to be the one who never gives up. A lion can kill a human in 1 second. But a human can track that lion for 3 days, across 100 miles, through a desert, without food or water. And when the lion finally collapses from exhaustion, the human walks up and cuts its throat. Thorn's smile returned. That's what we are, Vorth. We're the species that doesn't stop. You can run. You can hide. You can beg. But we will find you. We will hunt you. And we will end you. Because that's what persistence predators do. The War Master sat in silence for a long time. His advisors watched him. His crew watched him. The humans watched him. Finally, he spoke. What do you want? Surrender, Thorn said. Unconditional surrender. Your fleet stands down. Your empire withdraws from all non-Vorth space. Your warriors return to your homeworld. And you, personally, will sign a treaty stating that the Vorth Dominion will never again threaten humanity or its allies. And if I refuse? Thorn shrugged. Then my first fleet turns your homeworld into a molten rock. My second fleet destroys your ships here. And my third fleet, the one you haven't detected yet, spends the next 50 years hunting down every single Vorth who tries to hide in the void. It will be slow. It will be thorough. And it will be permanent. Vorth looked at the human ships surrounding him. He looked at the star map showing the fleet approaching his home. He looked at his own crew, brave warriors, loyal soldiers, all of them staring at him with eyes that asked a single question. What have you done? He closed his eyes. I surrender. The word was bitter on his tongue, but not as bitter as the alternative. The treaty was signed 3 days later on neutral ground, a small space station orbiting a dead star. Captain Okonkwo represented humanity. General Thorn stood behind her, silent and watchful. Vorth brought his finest diplomats, his most eloquent negotiators. It did not matter. The terms were non-negotiable. The Vorth Dominion would cease all military operations. Their fleet would be reduced to 1/10 of its current size. Their expansion would stop, and they would pay reparations to every human colony that had ever been threatened by their empire. Vorth signed the document with a shaking hand. Then he looked up at Captain Okonkwo. Tell me something, he said. All of this, the empty colony, the machines, the hidden fleets, was it all a trap? Did you know we were coming? Okonkwo shook her head. We didn't know, but we were ready. We're always ready. Why? Why live in constant fear of attack? The captain smiled. It was the same calm, fearless smile she had worn on the day the Vorth first arrived. Because we remember what happened to the last species that caught us off guard. We hunted them to extinction, and we swore we would never let it happen again. Not to us. Never again to us. Vorth felt a cold understanding settle over him. The other species, the ones you erased from history, they attacked you first, didn't they? Yes. And you killed them all. Every last one. The War Master was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been gnawing at him since the battle. The name you give yourselves, humans. What does it mean? Okonkwo's smile softened, just a little. It comes from an old word. Humus. Earth. Ground. Dirt. You named yourselves after dirt? We named ourselves after the thing that gives life and takes it away. The thing that is patient. The thing that endures. She stood up from the table. We are the dirt, War Master. We are under your feet, in your lungs, on your skin. And no matter how high you rise, you can never escape the ground. She turned and walked away. General Thorn followed. Behind them, the human delegation filed out of the room, leaving the Vorth alone with their treaty and their shame. Kalevorn sat at the table for a long time after they left. He thought about the machines that had torn his warriors apart. He thought about the fleets that had appeared from nowhere. He thought about the empty colony and the abandoned buildings and the single audio file that had started it all. You fool. You just declared war on the galaxy's most lethal predator. He looked down at the treaty. At the bottom of the page, beneath his own shaky signature, the humans had added a small note. Just 2 words, written in perfect Vorth script. We warned you. Outside the station, the human fleet began to jump away, one ship at a time. They did not look back. They did not gloat. They simply vanished into the void, returning to their hidden worlds, their underground bunkers, their eternal vigilance. They were the dirt, and the dirt was patient. It would wait. It would watch. It would endure. And if any other species ever made the same mistake as the Vorth, if anyone else looked at humanity and saw weakness, the dirt would rise up and remind them of the oldest truth in the galaxy. You do not declare war on the apex predator. You do not hunt the hunter. And you never, ever threaten the species that never stops. Because they will find you. They will follow you. They will catch you. And then they will end you. Permanently.